So I'm sitting here at the 2025 AGA Operations Conference with Brad Adamcik. And Brad, you're on the DIMP committee, right?
Yes, yeah, I'm the chair of the Distribution Integrity Management Committee.
So tell me a little bit about who you are, what you do, how you got into pipelining. Kind of give me your story.
Yeah. So, work for CenterPoint Energy. I'm the director of system integrity and reliability. So I handle our transmission, distribution, storage integrity, as well as some system planning and engineering standards. Been in the industry about 14 years, with the last 12 at CenterPoint.
Yeah, cool. So how'd you end up at CenterPoint?
So, so born and raised in Houston.
Well, that kind of explains it, right? You're born and raised in Houston. You're kind of, you got a better than average chance to end up in oil and gas.
There you go. Yeah. Went to A&M, came right back after school, and it was pretty easy to get into the industry. And
we should do
that. Next thing you know, next thing you know, I'm at CenterPoint. Yeah.
Cool. So, sorry, I'm having a little fun because I've been doing this all day.
Yeah.
So, tell me, what does the DIMP committee work on? What's your mission as a DIMP committee as part of AGA?
Yeah, so our main focus is 192 subpart P. So a lot of companies now, they'll have the separate distribution integrity team. So a lot of that is all the distribution assets that you report every year to the DOT. Usually do March 15th. So really, we just manage the integrity for those. So it's similar to transmission, but different in that it's a little more operator-based, a little more risk-based, not as prescriptive as transmission. So a lot of nuances, a lot of things like that go along with it.
So not being an integrity guy, I know I can kind of talk intelligently for somebody that doesn't understand. So I would think that the primary difference between transmission integrity and distribution integrity is the method of inspection.
Yes.
Right? Because in transmission, it's all about smart pigs and data analysis and all that. And in a lot of the distribution assets, you can't do it that way.
No, really, the closest thing we have to an actual inspection is a leak survey. We figured out, is something leaking or not. Other than that, we rely on risk models, which we talk a lot about in our committee meetings, and what other ways we can collect data and try to refine those risk models and see, okay, where are leaks going to happen next, and what can we do to prevent those or respond faster?
Yeah, so what kind of things is DIMP working on in that domain right now?
Yeah, so we're constantly talking about what types of data we can collect from the field, how people are working with other groups like damage prevention, emergency response, GIS. How can we better collect the data, and then once we have it, how can we make it useful in our risk model?
Yeah, to me that's kind of an interesting subject. So, what are you doing? What are the common ways of data collection? Like, I would assume. Well, I'm going to maybe pivot a little bit. Is the mega rule affecting that requirement for data collection and getting stuff into GIS and all of that?
Not the mega rule. The mega rule is really just transmission integrity. So for us, though, we do have the safety of gas distribution pipeline rule. The notice proposed rulemaking came out. We think there will be a GPAC coming soon where we'll be able to comment on in the industry, but that will be like the distribution mega rule, basically.
Yeah. So what are the methods you guys use for data collection?
Yeah, so what we do versus transmission is we really rely on other teams while they're already out there doing work in the field. So teams that are installing pipe, teams that are repairing pipe, when people are processing work orders, we really rely on just having them collect more data in that process. And then we work on the back end to try to funnel that data into useful risk models and different things for us so we can look at it intelligently.
Yeah, so maybe said another way, it's the guys that are doing leak surveys, the guys that are doing response, the guys that are doing repairs and installations and all that. You're relying on them, and probably not so much as much them as the tools they're using to get the data in a way that it lands in a database that you can look at.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So we try to make it as seamless as possible instead of, someone out in the field thinking, oh man, here's another thing I got to do. I still have to do the same amount of work and now I got to fill out these extra forms. We try to make that as seamless as possible. So they're just doing their job and we're collecting more data along the way.
Yeah, so I would expect that there's a lot of interesting discussion in DIMP about different people and techniques and processes for doing that.
Yeah. A lot of it even goes to, who controls the data at different organizations, who controls what data, how good is good enough for your data accuracy, things like that.
Oh, that's a big question, man, because Yeah, I'm sure you could spend like hours just on how good is good enough, because the devil's in the
Yeah,
details, right?
it is. It
Do I
is.
need to know where the pipe is? Do I need to know what the pipe is? Do I need to know the pressure it's operating at? Do I need to know the condition of the metal or the plastic? All of that stuff, and then how much is enough? Because
Mhm.
particularly, so you guys have a lot of older assets, as most utilities do.
Yes.
So it's one thing collecting that stuff when you're putting in something new or you're repairing something.
Mhm.
How do you collect that data for the old stuff?
So interestingly, a lot of companies will go through records research projects over the years, and that's one of the things we've been talking about, especially in the committee recently, is with AI being such a force nowadays. How can we leverage that to go back through those same records we've looked at with human eyes and collect data we didn't have before, or maybe link up multiple documents together that we couldn't do to find out more information on the pipe?
Do you still, and I don't mean you, Centerpoint, but like you, the DIMP,
Mhm.
are there still a lot of records that are solely paper? Or has most of that been digitized by
Most,
now?
I'd say most of it's been digitized.
Yeah,
Yeah, but we still have the paper records, so if we ever need to go back, we
right.
can do that. Yeah, but a lot of it has been scanned in. They're PDFs at the least. Yeah.
So is anybody doing anything trying to get an AI to actually go through those digitized old paper records?
We have a few people where they're talking about it. AI, that's something where, your IT departments, things like that, they're still evaluating, right? A little weary, like, let's just make sure when we do it, we're not doing something that compromises, the safety of our systems, right?
Yeah,
But yes, we are looking at how we can do that and, not compromise our cybersecurity at the same time.
right. Well, I'm aware of a couple of companies that have projects where they built AI crawlers.
Mhm.
And there's a lot you have to do to make sure that that's going to be crawling only inside my network and only inside my network.
Mm.
But I'm aware of some people that are doing that. Mostly, they're doing it to identify where are all the policies and procedures, and where are all the records. They're not really trying to analyze things just so much as to locate them.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's in
We've
a
looked at
big
that too.
company,
Yeah.
that's a big dang deal.
Yeah.
In a little company, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
that problem in spades, man.
Mm.
So, what else? What other things other than data gathering and retention? What other kind of things are you guys looking at?
So one of the things with the more rule makings lately. So I mentioned the safety of gas distribution rule. There was the LDAR rule. I know it's been frozen for now, but it will come back some point in the near future. Is all right. How do we incorporate that into DIMP? A lot of that is at least partially or wholly, something DIMP's going to have to manage. And then how do we have those conversations with our states? One of the things that's interesting with us is since a lot of us, we're intrastate operators, we have our states regulate us. And so what you'll see between the states, they all read the code just a little bit differently, sometimes different enough to where they come up with their own ideas.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of talking through that, trying to talk with other operators. Hey, are you hearing this? How do you handle this? What do we think about this? And then where are things where we can
Yeah.
come together as an industry and maybe make a white paper to give
I,
the
I,
regulators guidance? Things
yeah,
like
I think we need to put a white paper together, and it's interesting because the LDAR rule, it made it all the way to the doorstep of the Federal Register and didn't get into the Federal Register, and as usually happens when a new administration comes in, it's a change of party. They pull all that stuff back and reassess it. So LDAR has been pulled back. I think we'll end up with an LDAR rule. I think it's going to be fairly low priority for this administration, and I think it'll be kind of fundamentally different. And I actually think that's a good thing. So this came up. I spent about half my time in gas control, about half my time in field ops. This came up in field ops, and they were talking about, well, what is your strategy, given that rule's not going to happen today?
Mhm.
And the answer, I think, it could be framed as, well, we're going to move forward, but we're going to be more deliberate about asset replacement versus leak repair. Because one of the big things, and I've done several podcasts on this, but that's one of the big things. If I've got cast iron pipe, do I want to spend my resources fixing leaks, or do I want to replace the cast iron pipe?
Yeah, no, that's
Right?
it. That's a good point. It's a good point.
And I think what people are doing is, rather than having a 90-day horizon, I got to get this done. Now they're looking at, well, I got a 2 to 3 year horizon, and I can be a bit more strategic and deliberate about the process.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what y'all are talking about as well?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we're seeing most companies they're either dipping their toe in the water with advanced leak detection or just jumping right in. And even then, there's still there's a learning curve. So we do talk through that a lot. What's it like going from traditional leak survey to advanced, and then just trying to be prepared. So whenever we do get that final rule on LDAR, we're a lot more ahead of the curve and ready to go. We're not going to be scrambling as much.
So we're on the exhibition floor. Have you walked around and looked at all of the leak detection tech that happens to be on the floor?
There is a lot. Yeah, it's a lot more than there used to be.
I was kind of surprised. I've only seen one drone. And I remember probably 6 years ago, half the show was drones.
Yeah, you're right. No, it does seem like there's more of a focus to, I guess, a ground-based leak survey versus the drones. Yeah.
Did you guys happen to talk at all about the various satellite offerings that are showing up our industry and how those could be applied how does that change leak survey and all that?
Yeah. We talked about that in the committee already this week, and it's something to where it's another tool in the tool bag. You can get more of that high-level view of your whole system in a quicker time, right? In one big snapshot. So it's definitely a good tool, similar to like the drones.
Right.
You can have the vehicles on the ground. So depending whatever you're going for, right? If you're getting a congested urban area, if you're trying to get to a rural area, use the tool in the tool bag that makes the most sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So anything else, key topics of interest that people might be wanting to know about?
So with DIMP, really a lot of it is just how can we incorporate more and try to stay ahead of the curve and try to make sure we're all learning the right lessons. So one of the things I encourage anybody listening to this to check out the DIMP committee in the future is we're very open. We try to help out operators because if somebody has an issue, that's something that we would love to talk about just because hey we've all probably had that issue in the past and we try to just help everybody be on the same page. Everybody being safe, it helps everybody else in the industry.
Nice segue. That's where I was going to go next is so how did you become involved with DIMP? How did you end up on the leadership for the committee itself?
So I ended up in the committee. So I was a distribution integrity engineer, went to a few committee meetings and, just through participating and helping out, talking when we had roundtables, things like that. I got asked to be one of the committee chairs. The committee chair process is you work from the end and you start going until you're the number one person. So it's a yearly cycle.
Yeah, and most of the committees have either a 3 or a 4 year cycle.
Yeah.
Given the officer positions they have for the committees.
Yeah, same thing for us.
Yeah. So I'm with you. I mean, I've been involved with AGA for over 20 years, and I've been involved over the years in different committees. I've made wonderful friends. I've learned a ton, and I'm always just kind of compelled by how the committee leans in to help one another. Mm-hmm. So do y'all have anything you're doing in the way of white papers you're trying to write or any kind of peer review process that you're doing?
Yeah, so right now, in anticipation of the safety gas distribution rule, we do have a white paper we're working on for low probability, high consequence events. That's something to where, kind of the black swan type events.
Right.
It's hard to always be prepared for those. So try to get our arms around it. What are the bounds of what we're thinking that is? Would a hurricane in Nebraska count? Just different things like that, and trying to get us all on the same page of when we talk about this, what are we thinking? And how are we handling it? How are we communicating it to our executives, right? Because it's real easy for them to say, it's never happened to us. Why should we dedicate resources to it, right? So just trying to help make that process of communicating the message a little bit better.
That question causes my hackles to come up a little bit. Not like I'm angry, it just makes me concerned, right? Because if you study incidents, particularly in the pipeline space, we don't have very many. They're very rare. Many of us, if not most of us, will probably work an entire career and never have direct experience with a major incident. However, when they occur, they have exceedingly high consequences. So you're kind of looking for a needle in a haystack.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think in distribution in particular presents a really unique challenge. Because when you're talking about that in integrity management, you probably ran a tool and you probably have some indication that feature is there that you need to be concerned about. But in distribution, it's always what's out there that I don't know about that I need to know about, and how do I know about it?
Yeah, and especially if it's more people process oriented,
Yeah.
that's even harder to tell. How do you know that there was a new tech assigned to perform a task, and all of a sudden they were given a task that was just a little bit more difficult beyond their knowledge, and they just
Or they saw an operating condition that's normal but really unusual.
yes,
Right.
yeah,
And how do you know they handled it correctly?
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And that's not really a reflection on the people in the field. I mean, we have very capable, very competent, very well trained people in the field, but all of us, we all have an edge to what we know.
yeah.
Right. And so it's interesting. I would offer that what would be really interesting to do is, what would it take to build an AI to go through the records and look for the needle in a haystack? That's an interesting question.
That's a great question, and I think that's something that we'll continue our conversations around in the committee.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, if I have a brilliant idea, I'll be sure to come see you.
That sounds great.
So, anything else you want to talk about in terms of AGA or the conference? Is there anything particular you're taking away that you'll probably take back to Centerpoint, and it's like, okay, here's a little jewel, little nugget I need to take back?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, just talking to other operators, one of the things I heard this from someone a lot smarter than me a few years ago, but the cheapest lessons you can learn are from other people's mistakes. So,
so true.
A couple of those came up, but something as simple as with our distribution assets, the GIS data is not as accurate as our transmission assets, so it's hard to overlay things and do intersections to see if maybe you have a tree or a building over a line. It's harder to tell.
Well, the level of complexity to get that data really, really accurate is way different.
Exactly.
Plus or minus a foot in transmission has a whole different consequence than plus or minus a foot in distribution.
Exactly. Yeah. So leveraging our line locators, so they know right now if a building or a structure is over our lines. Okay, yeah, we need to work with getting that out of there. But even just trees that have been planted, things like that,
right.
Maybe they weren't there when we first installed it. We didn't think it would be there. Maybe the homeowner didn't even intend for it to be there, right? You don't always, not every tree you plant, is planted.
Not every tree is there because somebody planted it.
Exactly. Yeah. So just things like that. How can we make it to where we can get an alert? Oh, hey, this is right over our distribution line. Let's evaluate it. Let's make sure it gets an appropriate risk ranking.
Yeah, well, that's certainly an area where satellite provides a lot of promise, and that tech is growing really, really fast. I mean, just in the 10 years I've known anything at all about it, it's probably gotten exponentially better.
Yeah.
Just, in terms of just the pixel size and the data quality in the pixel, just gotten a lot better. To me, it's interesting. And I don't know a whole lot about DEMP. I always enjoy talking to you because I always learn something. What I would say about AGA is my biggest challenge is I'll come back, particularly when I was younger and I was on, really steep on the learning curve. I would come back and I'd have pages and pages and pages of notes and ideas. And one of the things I learned is, after I got back, I needed to go through all that and pick 1, 2, maybe 3 to try to get done this year, and the rest of them just kind of let them simmer till next year.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, I had a couple ideas. I was already, I'm on Teams chat with some of my team members, and we're chatting, hey, can we do this? Is this easy, hard? How long would it take? So,
right.
Yeah, we're going to evaluate some of those. And we had some others where we could tell that would be a bigger lift. Let's let it simmer. Let's see if maybe we have a better opportunity down the road.
Yeah, exactly. Well, listen, man, great to have you on the podcast. This is we're trying something new. We've typically done these things in the booth like this, kind of short form. I hadn't done a lot of long form, so that we're just starting this. For listeners, we're dropping this out through YouTube, and I'd be very interested to hear your feedback about what you think about the video. Should we just stick with audio? All that kind of stuff. So, anyways. Thanks for being like a trailblazer on the Pipeliners podcast.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here. Thanks, Russell.
All right.